I've been given a strange task. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I'm supposed to introduce Jessica Ahlquist. Has anybody heard of her? Anybody been to the Reason Rally? Okay. I think I'm probably not needed, but Jessica is too humble to brag, so I will brag for her. She's a 17-year-old activist from Rhode Island, and this, as the story goes, there was an unconstitutional prayer banner in her school. That's not just my opinion. That is now the judge's opinion, that this prayer banner is unconstitutional. Jessica challenged this, eventually going to litigation, which she won. But because of this, she got harassment, death threats, hate mail, and my favorite example was a local politician, publicly, on the radio, called her an evil little thing for standing up for our rights, which seems accurate. But she embraced the nickname. Some of you have seen people wearing the evil little thing t-shirts, and really just getting behind it, and that's one of the things that impresses me most about Jessica, that she comes through this standing, smiling, and speaking, inspiring other people to stand up for our rights and become activists. Jessica actually won the 2011 Individual High School Activist of the Year award from the SSA because of what she did, inspiring other high school students to stand up, and honestly, inspiring all secular people to stand up, college age and non-students. That's really something that we're looking for here at the conference, inspiration, and I know that she's modest, but I expect a great speech. Let's welcome Jessica.
Okay, so I'm wearing this hat for my presentation. It's Sarah's, but I have become very fond of it. So yeah, there was the whole court case thing. And we won that in January, and honestly, I'm glad that it's over. It was a lot of fun, I guess you could say. It was also really miserable. And while the victory was worth it, I felt that we had won long before that, just when the issue gained national attention, and there were more people who were sending me messages saying that, hey, I came out of the closet when I saw what you did. And to me, that's more of a victory than even having won in court. And so I had attended these meetings for several months with no success of convincing the school of removing the prayer amicably. And, you know, they would pat me on the head and tell me to go to law school, basically acknowledging that I was correct in my position on the law, but giving it little regard because the political aspect of the issue was considered more important. And these people were politicians. That was their job, their life. I was advocating for the law, arguing that our country is secular and that we need to respect a separation of church and state, while the Death Eaters threatened their political careers instead and had no real arguments. Politics won, and it required a lawsuit in order for me to gain my rights at my school. And obviously I was portrayed as the bad guy. For a long time, the media was making me out to be the intolerant, sue-happy devil child of the ACLU. But, of course, I was doing the right thing in filing a lawsuit, and I do believe, though, that the lawsuit is the reason that I was viewed negatively. When the outpour of hate began, however, I was suddenly innocent again. A victim, even. So it's funny that at first I was bad, and then I became this kind of martyr, almost. And it wasn't entirely obvious to me at first, but that whole aspect of this case was political. There was, of course, the law, but I think the thing that made this case a big deal was that it was political. The atheist community is often compared to civil rights movements, but I don't believe that it is one. We say that we are looking to get our rights, but we do that mainly with the hope of being socially accepted. The law does not actually discriminate against us in most cases. Blacks fought for their right to vote, as did women. Gays are fighting for their right to marry, and then there's us. In most cases, we have our rights. Compared to these other minorities, the goals that these movements are the goals that they had are concrete and measurable, whereas our community is really focused on changing minds and becoming accepted members in equal in society. There will be no one day when we will wake up in the morning and say, well, now we can vote, or now we can get married in every state. What we should really call this is a social acceptance movement. What we are really trying to achieve is extremely vague and thus extremely difficult. I believe that the law is an excellent tool for achieving respect, but respect is only one piece of what we're really fighting for. And we seek to be accepted and equal not only through the eyes of the law, but in the minds of other members of society. What I have learned from my own case and observing other issues in our community is that we have more of a chance of successfully changing our reputation if we can fix our public relations problems. And honestly, we do have problems. No, we aren't the ones who, kill people in abortion clinics and blow up buildings and touch little kids and, have holocausts, all in the name of God. But if we face it, we have a really bad reputation. We're thought of as the bad guys who sit behind our computer screens writing about how much we love Satan, baby eating, and pissing off Christians. It's not fair, but we usually are portrayed negatively. And, what can we do about this? It's a question that, I've seen posed hundreds of times in the community, and we really don't have an answer. I know people say, this will help, that will help, and I'm not going to be here and try to say that I do know, because I don't, and I don't think anybody does. But there are certain things that have worked for me, and I think the number one thing is that I saw this at first as a legal issue, and then later it did evolve into a political issue for me. There were times when I was interviewed about the case, but it was hardly about the case at all. I remember at the press release for my lawsuit when I filed in April of last year, the first question was, do you celebrate Christmas? And I was so confused then because I couldn't imagine what that possibly had to do with my lawsuit. But it occurred to me later that it's all politics. And that might seem like a disadvantage for us. Because if I said right now that I wanted to run for president, and then I married a girl and adopted a black baby or something, I would be less respected than Sarah Palin, even if my views were brilliant. And so, again, it's not fair, but that's just the sad truth. And that's what we're up against. And when we are put into a situation where we have the opportunity to speak to people, and I don't mean atheists, I don't mean something that, Hemet puts on his blog, and the only people who read it are the people who agree with it. And not to say that, of course, there are people who go on there and disagree with it, but that is considered atheist media. When I say speak to people, I mean the general population. And we should conduct ourselves in such a way that makes it very difficult to put us in the negative, in the wrong. I was once asked if I sympathize with the people who wanted the prayer to stay up in my school. And I was surprised that I had been asked this because it was the first time. And I kind of wanted to snap back at her well, do you know what they've done to me? Why would I sympathize with people who have put me through hell? But instead, I said that I see it as making a little child get a shot. And they see it as a negative thing now, but someday they won't. And that makes it a lot harder to hate me. That makes it a lot harder to say that I'm wrong, that I'm the bad guy, that I'm intolerant. I say I sympathize with people. And, I also sympathize with, serial killers and stuff because I think that, it's their nature and that they can't really help it. Not to compare them to serial killers, but you know what I mean. And there's actually a book called Victory, the Triumphant Gay Revolution, and it's by Linda Hirschman. And there's a quote in that book that says, "Movements arise only when people come to see that their problems are political, not natural or personal." And I feel that this, everyone's tweeting at me now, and I feel that this quote kind of hits the nail on the head of our own community. We need to focus more on the political aspects of our community, of our movement. And if we want to call it a movement, we need to figure out what it is exactly that we're looking for. And I feel like the students of this conference, and of course all the conferences, the Center for Inquiry also had their conference a couple weeks ago, and I think there's a lot of overlap. And I believe that it's the students that are actually making us look a lot better. Instead of, encouraging this reputation that we have, they're changing it, they're fixing it. And I think that in a lot of ways, not to sound like a cheeseball, but this is the future of this community. If we want to go anywhere, we're going to need the younger people. And that's where I think the activism that people in this age bracket is really important, because when you see a friendly face, someone who you can relate to, it's a lot easier to feel comfortable, to feel like you're not the only one. I know that if I had known that the SSA or the CFI or a lot of these other organizations existed before I had come out, I would have felt a lot more comfortable doing it. And again, that's why I'm not going to stand here and say, this is how we're going to fix everything, because I can't. I don't know. But I wanted to give this presentation to just say that I think that we need to start considering what it is politically that we're looking for. So I would like to do a Q&A. Can we do that? Yeah? Okay.
Do you celebrate Christmas?
I do. I was raised in a family that wasn't very religious, but they always celebrated Christmas. So I do generally celebrate it as, part of my family, but it's not as though I've ever felt it as a religious thing. But yeah, that really pissed them off. They were like, well, how dare you take all our fun away if you don't believe in what we say. As if they're celebrating Christmas for Jesus. Yes?
Do you still get hate mail and death threats, or has it died down now that the case is over?
It's died down a lot, actually. I will occasionally get a random straggler, like on Twitter or something. I recently had one, and it was just crazy. I think he called me a horse gang slut, and I just thought that was really funny, because when you say it fast, it sounds like horse. Horse gang? I don't know. But anyway, I thought that was really amusing. And so while I don't actually get a lot of the hate anymore, the stuff that does come in is just funny. It's just stupid. Yes?
Somebody I used to be like a big center of people always hating me because I was. And so then somebody walked up to me one day when I was really upset, and they asked me a question. So when I figured out this question, then I would understand so much more. And they said, why does psychopathic mind think in some correct ways? And for me, that meant all the people out
I
there.
didn't hear that. You said, how what?
Why do psychopathic minds think in seldom correct ways?
Okay.
And for me, that meant to me, I figured out for myself was everybody out there who thinks that we are stupid, retarded, crazy, psychotic, and we don't follow what they do, then why do we make sense? Why do we make sense?
Question.
I don't really understand what you're asking. Can you just rephrase it?
What I'm really trying to ask is out of everybody that we out of everybody that messes with us and says the worst things to us, why at the end of the day can we smile? I've noticed that. I can smile, but I don't understand why. I should always I feel like I should always be mad.
I think that you're part of a community. And I think that when you feel a sense of community, it takes a lot more to bring you down. I know that that's the case for me, at least. I mean, I'm still smiling now, even though, whatever's happened. And that's mostly because I have friends here, and because I feel accepted in some place, even though in other places I'm not welcome. So I hope the same is true for you. Yes?
Do you have future goals for yourself in the secular movement?
I do. I hope I do.
What do you want to be, I guess, is my question.
What do I want to be? I don't know. Everybody expects me to be a lawyer or a politician, and I can honestly say I have no interest in either one. I don't think I'd be very good at it. I'm too happy all the time. I would really like to keep working as an activist, and even if it's not my career, I would like to keep doing this. It's been a lot in my life just to find out it exists, and I want to give back if I can. So.
Yes. You talked about some of the hate mail and the negative responses you've gotten. Can you talk about like some of the really good responses that you've gotten?
Oh yeah.
We love you, Jessica!
I have gotten countless messages on Facebook, email, Twitter, from people saying that it's helped them to come out the closet to see what I did. And that means the most to me of anything, because I remember feeling scared to tell anybody, even my closest friends. And I wish now that a younger me would have felt more comfortable and would have found this community sooner. But the sad truth is that most people don't. And the fact that I was able to maybe help some other people is, that makes this all worth it for me. I also, to name one specifically, there was a whole Twitter storm of nonsense that happened a while ago. And I remember this one girl sent me a message on Facebook, I believe. And she wrote something like, I know I was part of the Twitter rampage against you a while ago, but I want you to know that it was mostly peer pressure, and that since then I have seen an interview that you gave, and I have changed my mind. And that has to be like the most meaningful message I've ever gotten from somebody, because it's not only saying, look, I agree with you, and it's always good to hear that, because I wasn't just doing this for myself, but that one in particular, the fact that someone said, yeah, you changed my mind, was also a big deal for me. And then there were actually other people in the school who I had known since we were little, and I wasn't particularly friends with them or anything, but they ended up sending me messages on Facebook. It's always Facebook. And they said, I do agree with you, and I'm actually an atheist too, but please don't tell anybody because I don't want to be in the same position as you. And that was hard to hear. I mean, it was good to hear that I was not alone in school. It was hard to hear that they weren't going to come out and help me, but, because I mean, the biggest argument was, you're the only one in the school who cares. And I'm like, actually, I have a list at home, but I can't tell you because I promised I wouldn't. It makes it difficult. But yeah, I think that the negative stuff doesn't even come close in comparison to the positive stuff that came of this.
Can we talk a little bit about the aftermath of the decision in your case? Was there an apology? Were you there when the banner got taken down? Was there more hate right away, or what happened?
Was there apology?
The people fighting you in your case.
Gosh, no. No, it's okay. There was the guy who called me evil little thing, my representative. He ended up apologizing because my uncle, who runs the humanist group in my state, yes, we have one group in the state, he went on the radio at the same time as Peter Palumbo, the representative. and my uncle got him to say sorry. And that was pretty cool, but he's like the only one who's actually publicly said sorry. The aftermath itself, I was not there to see the prayer removed. No one was. They did that quietly. In fact, it's funny because after they took it down, they wrote in the papers, because the school committee wouldn't tell them where the prayer was. They removed a piece of the wall, and yeah, that's how important this thing was. So they removed a piece of the wall, and then they wouldn't tell the media where it was. And so they just said it was an undisclosed location. and like, it makes it sound like the atheists were going to go track it down and like graffiti it or something. No. But yeah, it was funny. I don't know, there was the hate. It's not actually that interesting. It's all kind of crazy. But I am very glad that it's over. Yes.
What was your first question when you started questioning God and religion?
I know I've told this story before. My mother became mentally ill when I was about 10 years old, and I didn't really know what to do, and I wasn't necessarily religious at the time, but I kind of started praying because I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have any idea what emotions I was even experiencing. So I guess I turned to God, and because I was doing that, a feeling of guilt kind of came over me because I felt like, well, I know that my mom's sick, and I want her to get better, of course, but I feel guilty asking God to help me when there are other people who he hasn't helped who probably need it more than I do. And so I think that was kind of like what sparked something for me. And then, of course, prayer is useless. So I wasn't, seeing any difference in my mother. And that one question led to another, and then I just told my dad one day that I didn't believe in God. He said, yeah, neither do I. So it was okay. And I think that I was never actually religious. I just hadn't thought about it.
Has the mood thawed at your old school? Like, is atheism a little bit more accepted, or is it vilified now, or?
I don't know if it's one way or the other, but at least it's in conversation. And I think that's probably the coolest thing, because now it's not just, oh, there are no atheists here. I remember one of my friends, when all of this happened, she came into school and she told me, oh yeah, my mom was confused. She was like, I didn't know there were any atheists in Rhode Island. So clearly it was an area that needed to hear it. And I'm glad that I could be the person to piss them all off.
This is kind of a strange question, I guess. Is it weird that you're kind of an atheist celebrity? And is there anyone you look up to?
Don't call me the C word, man.
What word did you use to describe
I'm a speaker. This is what I love. This is what I do. I like to think I'm friends with everybody. It's like the high school experience I never had, so.
All the battles we've talked about tonight, from you and Max and Annie Laurie and all the awards, but are all worth fighting. But I've also heard you got to pick and choose your battles. So, what were your thoughts on that?
Oh, I definitely think you have to pick and choose your battles. I think that, like I said in my talk, I think that it's really important to come out looking like the good guys. And I'm not saying that we should ever, let someone discriminate against us. We should always be relentless when it comes to our rights. But I think there's a way to do it. I don't want to say anything offensive, but I don't think that Michael Newdow has a good attitude towards things. He is the man who is suing to have under God removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. And while I respect his cause, I think there are better ways that he could be doing it. I think that you need to have a certain presence, a certain goal. I don't think that his goal should just be removing under God from the Pledge of Allegiance. It should be changing minds, reaching out to people, and seeming like a friendlier face for atheism. And I think that's really why I think students are doing a better job, because they are a friendlier face than a lot of people who have come before.
I really like your analysis of this as a desire for more social acceptance rather than a specific right that we're looking to sort of take in for ourselves. But that sort of asks the question, and I think you brought this up, so where do we go next?
Right.
What do we do next?
And I think that's why, like, that's exactly the question I'm posing. I want to say that I think where we go next is that we continue the activism we've been doing. I think that while the activism we're doing is effective, it'll only become more effective the more people who are doing it. So I would say that outreach is our biggest goal right now. And that's kind of what makes this hard for us, because there is not going to be a day when we can celebrate and be like, yay, we win. Because how do we measure this? How do we say we're successful, we've changed everyone's minds, and now they don't hate us? We can't do that. So it's going to be hard, and I think that when we all get together at these events and these questions are brought up and people are talking, that has to be the best way to answer that question.
Thinking about exactly what our goals as a movement are, clearly, increasing acceptance and tolerance of non-theists is a big goal. But we could also see as goals, having, law and public policy be based on reason and evidence. Some of us may see as a goal straight up increasing the number of atheists or nuns or whatever you want to call them in the population. So I'm just wondering, to what extent do you see these things as goals of the movement, and do you see these goals reinforcing each other or competing with each other, or, can you go somewhere with that?
I don't think that everyone's going to agree, even in our community. I don't think that's a realistic thing to expect. Obviously, there's lots of disagreements, and as long as I think everyone's working towards what they really believe is the right thing, then fine. I'm not going to tell somebody that what they really believe is the best thing for our community to do isn't, because I'm not going to say that my ideas or opinions are more valid than somebody else's. I personally would just like to kind of not redirect the community, because I think it's already been redirected, but I think that just a continuation of activism. And that's why I'm big on the media thing, where it's not just atheist media. I was honored to be asked to do interviews with people in the community, but it was a bigger deal to me to be on CNN, because that was a greater audience of people who might be closeted atheists, or might not even know the word atheist, who were going to be seeing this and who might relate to it. And so, like, personally, my goal, or what I think what I would like to see happen to the community, is that we are reaching out. And I know there's lots of outreach, and it's a hard thing, and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy, but that would be, like, my thing. But if somebody else wants to focus on something different, that's why we have different organizations. That's why all of them working together is the best solution. So I hope that answered your question, and it's a hard one.
Well, thank you for all you've done, Jessica. And I'd like to ask you, what are some things that teachers or other adults could do to make things easier for students and well, students or just young atheists in general?
Something that teachers can do. None of the teachers in my school would talk to me, really. They were afraid of being fired for, like, associating with me. And I remember I was trying to start an SSA at my school when I was still there. And the one teacher who I thought might help me, because he did kind of tell me, like, really quietly one day that he agreed with me, when I asked him if he would help with the group, he said, every year I get laid off, and thankfully I get rehired every year. But if I were to take on being the advisor of this group, I don't think I would be hired again for political reasons. And, you know, it hurt, and I was upset that he wouldn't help us, but I understand. You know, he has a family that he needs to provide for. I would say that the biggest contribution a teacher can do is help, is to take that risk, to, you know, be brave even when stuff like that can happen, and to help students who are clearly doing something that's taking them a lot of effort. And I'm thankful to all the teachers who do. I didn't have any who really came out publicly and said they agreed with me, but it would have been really great to have them.
Well, basically, I know that there's a lot of atheists that I've talked to who support you, but not so much your cause of like taking down the prayer banner and other such things. And they say.
So how do they support me? Is it because I'm
well, they're like,
a
oh
victim?
well, she's getting like death threats and everything. It's terrible what's happening to her, and I'm all for her like being an atheist and everything, but not so much. The prayer wasn't hurting anyone or anything, but my basic question is like, how do we get these atheists who are just like atheists, but not really involved in any act or anything, like into the fold? Like, how do we bring them up and have them help out?
Well, first of all, we're not hurting anyone. The people who liked the prayer were hurting me. So. How do you get people that to care? I'm asking myself that because I have this cousin who really drives me crazy because he tells me he's an atheist, and you know, he's like, I don't care about anything, cool guy. But it really bugs me that he's an intelligent person who agrees with me, but doesn't care. And I'm like, how can you not care? You know, I've done all this stuff trying to protect our Constitution, and you don't even want to, like, come to a school meeting with me, just to be another person sitting in the audience. And that, I think, is another huge goal that we have. How do we get people like that to see? And I like to think that, I mean, someone was like yelling at me on Twitter because I keep retweeting all of the negative things people say to me. And I imagine it must get annoying for my followers, but I think it's important because if someone was following me and they're like, oh, well, the Christians really aren't that bad, they see the kind of death threats I get, and I really hope they see how bad they can be. And I feel like a lot of it's an attitude. I think that they're afraid. I think that saying, oh, I don't care, like, yeah, you're right, but I don't want to, like, be an activist. It's because they know what strings are attached to being an activist. And I don't know if activism is for everybody. I wouldn't want my cousin to be involved in this if it was going to make him extremely depressed. And, I mean, I hope that he changes his mind, and I'm going to keep nagging him. But, you know, I want to do it in such a way that, again, makes me like a good guy and not a bad guy.
One more.
What do you think is the best way for college students to help high school students out? Because, I mean, one of the biggest things that I've been trying to figure out would be a way for college students to help out with high school students who are interested in the atheist movement and want to become a part of that without being, you know, that creepy guy who goes into high school.
I think that's where you are at the advantage and the local community groups aren't. I think that parents aren't going to be freaked out if you're coming into a school. I mean, you, but... I'm kidding, but yeah, I don't think that parents are going to be necessarily bothered by college kids coming into a school, as opposed to, like, you know, the group of middle-aged men that meet every week for dinner. Like, that would be a lot weirder. I think that parents should be glad to see college kids because I mean, what else do college kids reach out to high schoolers for? Lots of different things. You know, I remember in my own school there would be like tables set up, trying to get us to go to their school or whatever. And it's perfectly acceptable for, and there's what, a 4-year age difference? So it's not really that bad. And I think that if you did maybe contact some of the groups in local high schools and let them know that they're welcome to join you guys in community service projects or some kind of, you know, whatever you're doing, even if it's just like a movie night, that would really make them feel a lot better, because they probably aren't as capable as planning these things because, you know, they don't have the same resources. And of course, inviting them to like carpool to events with you or that kind of thing, it's all good.
All right, that's all we have time for, but let's give Jessica a big round.